Hi guys, so this is going to be a video on my choice of deciding to exclusively pump and how that's going for us. And I have little Miss Ava here. It is kind of almost past her time to eat, so hopefully I can make this video, I can finish it. I've been getting a lot of questions on when I post pictures of like my milk stash and stuff. People are asking me like, why am I building a stash? Do I pump and breastfeed, and how all that is going and my decision. So I decided to make a video about it and what I chose and what works best for us. So with Phoenix, I kind of, just a little backstory, I exclusively pumped, but that's because he would not latch, and it was because I was in recovery for a while, and they had given him formula, and in the hospital kind of just kept going with the formula. I didn't even pump until like the night before I left, and then at home I tried to latch him. I didn't even latch him at the hospital. It was a mess. First time mom, I really didn't even, I wanted to breastfeed, but it was just like all over the place, being how I ended up having a C-section and everything went. It was just kind of like, you know, things changed last minute. So I tried to latch him for a few days and it just wouldn't work, and it was very frustrating. I tried a nipple shield and that was even more frustrating. So I decided to just pump. I mean, that's, you know, at least he was getting the milk. But I was not producing enough, so I had to supplement him, and then there was a few months where he was just on breast milk. Like I would make enough and then, you know, back to having to supplement him, and on and off. And then about 8 months I just stopped pumping because it wasn't enough to be a difference, and pumping so much was just, you know, wear you out. So this time I was really adamant, and I really wanted to breastfeed. I wanted her to latch on, and I said if she didn't latch on, I was not gonna pump. That's it. If she didn't latch on, she was getting formula. Like that was my thought going into this pregnancy and this baby. And as soon as she was born and they brought her to me and we did skin to skin, and she breastfed, she latched on okay. Like she wasn't perfect. She latched on to the right side more than the left side, and for the first my whole time in the hospital, actually, she was just on breast milk, and it was going okay. The last night I was there though, I did pump because she would go long without eating and then not really latch to one side, and I was engorged, so I decided to start pumping. And then I gave her that from the bottle, and of course they're doing something outside. Let's see, let's wait till they pass. Okay, so I pumped and I got a little bit out and I gave her that, and then she's crying, so let me feed her and then I will finish this video. So that first night I pumped and then would give it to her, and she would drink it, and it worked well. So that whole night I pumped and then would give her that milk, and that kind of worked good because and then I would always try to latch her first, and she just really wasn't doing too great with latching, and she wouldn't be there too long. And being that I had a C-section and the way I was sitting and everything, it was just really uncomfortable. The hospital was not great, so the help wasn't awesome, and I was by myself. So that worked for you know, my last day in the hospital. Then when we came home, I kind of tried the same thing. Like I would pump one side and have the bottle ready, and then I would always try to latch her. But I figured like in the middle of the night it would be better and easier to have a pumped bottle of exactly a certain amount, give it to her, and that would help her sleep, and I would know exactly how much she got, so it would give me a little bit more time to know like more or less when she would be hungry again. And that's how it started. But I would always still try to latch her. And then a couple days in, she just wasn't latching the same. I got a nipple shield and she did better with it, but honestly a nipple shield is really uncomfortable and really hard. Like you have to kind of hold it and put it, and it's not easy, to be honest. So looking back now, with Phoenix, I would have had more time to dedicate to figuring it all out and getting her to latch and all of that. But being that I have a toddler and a newborn, I didn't have the time to sit down and just nurse her all the time and figure out how to get her to latch and what worked and hold the nipple shield, because he, you know, he's a toddler, and Phoenix is a very good toddler, by the way. Like, he will sit and play with something. Like, if I wanted to get him to do something, I can put the TV on, or I can sit him with the iPad in front of me and he wouldn't move. He'd be there the whole time. But it's not fair to him for me to just be sitting down nursing her all day and not really paying attention to him. And he is a kid, so if he does get bored and gets up and runs away, what am I, that just throws it all off. So at that point, I decided that I was going to exclusively pump, and that worked for me. The first week or two was definitely hard because I was waking up in the middle of the night to pump. I would literally pump for her next feeding, so I would feed her, pump, and then go back to sleep. And I would kind of, you know, I kind of did this with Phoenix, so I kind of knew what it was about, and I would just kind of set her up, prop up the bottle as I got my pump thing ready, hold the pumps with one hand, and then hold her bottle with the other hand, so that way I can pump and feed her at the same time, so I wouldn't have to stay up longer. And it worked. So that's what we do. We exclusively pump, and my supply is crazy. Like, I had to buy a deep freezer for my milk because my freezer is packed, and it's just, I'm not pumping extra. I've actually decreased the amount I've been pumping, because not even because of choice, but because of how our day goes, you know, how the morning goes. So I pump about 4 times a day probably, and that's what she drinks, and then whatever's left over is what I freeze. So I'll pump about, on average, now she sleeps through the night. For the most part, she sleeps about 6-7 hours. So my first pump I do not wake up to pump though throughout that time. I wake up really engorged and sometimes a little wet, but I'd rather sleep. So when I pump in the morning, I get about 12 ounces, and then the other 3 times that I pump during the day, I'll get about 8 ounces, and this is combined, about 4 and 4, a little more, a little less. And then what I do is that I prepare her next 2 bottles, because I can't even, freshly pumped milk can be out up to 6 to 8 hours, depending where you look, but my math is I leave it out for 6 hours, and she eats every 3 hours. So with one time I pump, I set up 2 bottles, and then the next time I feed out, so I pump every other feeding pretty much, but when I started, I would pump every feeding, and that was hard, but I think it's what made my supply and what made everything good. So now I kind of pump every 2 feedings, so it goes about 4 times a day, which isn't bad. I'll pump right before she goes to sleep at night, or right as she drinks her last bottle. I'll pump and I'll set up those 2 bottles, and she has been sleeping longer, so I have to sometimes get milk from the fridge by the time she wakes up, because the milk that's pumped is kind of old already. Or I set up 2 bottles, but she only wakes up once, so the other one I'll have to toss, but I always just have them set just in case, because she has been sleeping that many hours for about 2 weeks now, and so, but it can change at any night, so I'm just always prepared, and I like it like that because I don't have to wake up and go warm anything up and be all over the place. I have a bottle set, I give it to her, and we literally fall right back to sleep, and then I pump as well. So exclusively pumping has definitely been working for me. I, you know, would have loved to have that bond and that ease of just putting her on me, but I do know that having a toddler requires a lot more work, and you know, cluster feeding is a thing, and I just couldn't be able to sit there and just breastfeed her all the time, and it seemed like that's what she wanted, and she was always hungry, or she would be fussy, and I wasn't sure if she was hungry or not because I didn't know how much milk she got. Did she get enough? Did she not get enough? So for me, it works to know, okay, she just drank 2 ounces and she'll be good to eat in another 2 hours, so I have 2 hours to do this, to play with Phoenix, or to do that, or whatever the case is. And it's not always on point, obviously, because babies are unpredictable, and sometimes she'll eat a little earlier or a little later, but I kind of already know her schedule, and I feel that because she bottle feeds, it's easier. And she's still getting breast milk, so you know, I think that's awesome. And I only had to supplement her one time, which was the day we came out of the hospital, because her bilirubin levels were low. So they told me to give her formula throughout the night to see if that helped her bilirubin levels go up, and it did. And then that's it. Other than that, she hasn't had formula. And I personally have nothing against formula, because Phoenix was definitely formula fed as well. He was a mixture and he's fine. So that being said, if you have any questions or you want me to do any other videos about exclusively pumping and, you know, how it works for us and, you know, my method and system of it, let me know in the links below. I am going to be doing organizing my milk stash soon. Once I get that all organized, I'm going to be doing a video on that, so look forward to that. And like I said, if you have any other requests, just leave them in the comments below, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.